Welcome, unlucky traveler, to another tale from the warp. We are grateful for you to heed our call and join us in the joyous bliss of war and incur. Before we enter the world of Warhammer 40k, tarnish the bell of notifications and like the carnage that you are soon to behold. Subscribe your soul to this realm of chaos so we may spread our corruption across the universe. Now open yourself up to the warp and let the chaos wash over you. In the forgotten vaults of the Ordo Chronos, there exists a forbidden tome, a record older than the Imperium, older than the Emperor's first breath. Its pages are stitched from the skin of extinct species, its ink distilled from the ashes of lost stars. The Mechanicus refer to it only as the Astronomicon of Night. Within lies a single, blasphemous truth. The universe did not begin with order. It began with terror, before the first neuron sparked, before the first organism crawled from the mud of a newborn world. Before reality understood it existed, there was the flame in the dark, a wound of fire torn through infinite night, a scream of matter rebelling against the silence. Some call it the first star, others, the birth wound of the warp. But those who know the deepest truths, those who have stared too long into the Immaterium, name it differently. The moment chaos awoke, from that first blaze came stars, and worlds, and life, and with them, the one force the warp craves above all. Emotion. Love and fear, hope and despair, war and death. As galaxies formed, so too did the shadow behind them, a reflection of every mortal thought. An ocean of hunger that would never again sleep. This is the story hidden beneath 10,000 lies. A story forbidden by decree of the High Lords. A story whispered by demons and feared by saints. It is the tale of how existence began, and how chaos came first.
In the beginning, there was nothing before gods, before stars, before even the concept of time. There was the first night. No light, no motion, no life. Only possibility. The Immaterium, the warp, existed first, a perfect storm of raw thought without thinkers, energy without intention, chaos without witness. It slumbered, without warning, or perhaps after an eternity, the first night ruptured. An explosion of physics and flame burned a hole in unreality. Matter screamed into existence. Stars ignited like gunshots in the void. Galaxies spiraled outward, measuring time by their motion. The Immaterium was born, a realm of limits, edges, rules. The warp recoiled, wounded by the sudden intrusion of cause and logic. But from that wound, it tasted something new. Curiosity. As stars spun and cooled, matter assembled, stones, worlds, oceans, and eventually thought. Primitive minds dreamed primitive dreams. Fear, hunger, wonder, emotion poured into the warp like water into cracked stone. The warp, once silent, began to whisper. Dreams became shapes, ideas became hunger, emotion became predators. Proto-demons slithered from the tides of thought. The warp had discovered life before humanity, before the Imperium, before chaos ruled mortal minds. There was only power. Across a young galaxy, the old ones mastered the secrets of the warp and life itself. They seeded suns with civilizations and crafted immortal empires whose names are forgotten by all but the void. They shaped species as easily as artists shape clay. They believed themselves wise enough to shepherd creation. In their shadow dwelled another ancient people, the Necronter. Born beneath a hateful, irradiated star, the Necronter lived short, painful lives. The Old Ones offered them no salvation, only distant contempt. With each funeral pyre, bitterness grew. Hope shriveled, envy calcified into hatred. The Necronter gazed upon the stargate citadels of the Old Ones and whispered a singular vow. We will not die in dust while they rule eternity. And thus the seed of war was sown. The Necronter's science probed reality's deepest fabric. They discovered entities of living energy feeding on the light of stars, immortal cosmos-born beings later known as the Katten. The Necronter built bodies of impossible metal to contain them and made the first gods manifest. The Katten smiled with a hunger older than galaxies. Promising immortality, they guided the Necronter down a path from which none would return. Flesh was replaced by necrodermis. Souls were sundered. A species became a legion of unliving metal. The Necronter died, and the Necrons awoke. The Katten feasted upon the lives consumed in the transformation, and hungered for more. Their next target was obvious. The Necron legions marched against the Old Ones, wielding Gauss weapons that stripped matter to atoms and starships that tore holes through creation. Warp storms burned across the void. Realities cracked. The Old Ones answered with psychic mastery unmatched in any age. They built new warrior races, precursors to the Eldar and the Orcs, crafting armies born to command the storms of the warp. Worlds died screaming. Nebulae became graveyards. And the galaxy learned fear. The conflict raged for millions of years. For every Old One bastion fortified by psychic might, a Katten demolished another with star-shattering ease. For every psychic race born, another was consumed and annihilated. The warp, once calm and placid, churned with the emotions of endless death. New predators, the first demons, slithered forth from the Immaterium. The Old Ones, pushed to desperation, weaponized the warp itself. It was their greatest triumph and their doom. Their creations, especially the ancestors of the Eldari, were blazing psychic beacons. Through them, chaos grew powerful, feeding on anguish and terror. The Katten laughed as the galaxy fractured. The Old Ones were dying. Even as victory neared, the Necrons looked upon their metallic forms and saw only slavery. The Katten fed upon their life energy, making their eternal existence a prison. Silent fury replaced obedience. In a single galaxy-spanning rebellion, the Necrons shattered the Katten into shards, a million dying stars screaming at once. Their former gods now bound weapons. But triumph brought no peace. The war had ruined everything. The Old Ones were gone. The warp was aflame with new horrors. Civilizations teetered on extinction. The Necron's silent kings weighed the future and found only more torment. With the galaxy poisoned by the warp and chaos ascendant, they chose a final gambit. Sleep now, and rise when the stars are right. Entire tomb worlds sealed, armies of death entombed in dark stasis. The war in heaven fell silent, but its scars never healed. The warp which has been clam sea now had storms. What had been whispers now roared. The agony of creation, awakened three great predators. Corn, born from endless slaughter. Zinch, awakened by schemes and change. Nurgle, fattened on decay and despair. Gods not of atoms, but of emotion. The Immaterium was fully awake, fully hungry. The universe could never sleep again. The Eldari inherited the stars. Humanity had not yet crawled from the mud. But in the screaming tides of the warp, the newborn chaos gods nursed their power. They would wait eons for their turn. And beneath a billion tomb moons, metal hands tightened around ancient weapons. The war in heaven ended in the twilight ages of the galaxy, when humanity still cowered in caves and stars themselves seemed young. The Eldari Empire thrived in impossible splendor. They shaped suns as artists shape clay, and bent the warp to their whims with the ease of thought itself. Every desire was fulfilled, every comfort perfected. For the Eldari, life was not a challenge, it was a canvas for pleasure. But perfection had lain upon them like a velvet shroud, smothering purpose. Pleasure, once a luxury, became the only pursuit. Across the core worlds, monstrous cities rose, palaces of sensation carved from iridescent crystal, theaters where emotions were sculpted and consumed like wine, and temples where worship was given only to the next indulgence. The very air seemed perfumed with hunger. Not all followed this descent. Some fled aboard massive craft worlds, choosing discipline and restraint. Others became exodites, abandoning it all for quiet frontier worlds. But the heart of the empire, the ruling elite, the ancient immortals, dove deeper. Their psychic souls, bright and vast, poured corruption into the warp. A shadow swelled there, unseen, unborn, a thing of hunger and promise. The Eldari laughed, oblivious. Then came the silent moment. A single instant without breath, without movement, the calm before detonation. Across the empire, nobles reclined in dreamlike stupor, their minds lost in ecstasy, until those dreams turned their teeth inward. What was pleasure became torment beyond comprehension, yet still desired, still clung to. Reality shuddered. A scream, not in air but in the warp itself, erupted from the Eldari soul, a scream of joy twisted into agony and agony exalted as joy. A god opened her eyes. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, she who thirsts. Born from billions of immortal minds, collapsing inward. Her first breath devoured a civilization. Worlds died in silence. Stars dimmed. Souls were ripped from bodies before thought could form, swallowed whole into a new divine hunger. Where the Eldari heartworlds had existed, a gaping wound now pulsed. The eye of terror, a storm of nightmare where real space bled into the Immaterium. They scattered, fractured into desperate paths. Craftwelders forged spirit stones to shield their souls. Drukhari learned to survive by inflicting suffering upon others. Harlequins danced under the protection of the laughing god. Exodites clung fiercely to old purity. The Unari, much later, would seek a new god, one stronger than death itself. But the Eldari would never again know peace. Their every breath was lived under the gaze of she who feeds upon desire. And in the warp, adorned in stolen souls and eternal hunger, Slaanesh smiled, newborn and already infinitely cruel. The sweetest feast had only just begun. Humanity arrived late, but with a gift the universe had never seen. Hope multiplied by fear multiplied by imagination. Their souls lit the warp like a bonfire, every triumph a feast for gods, every atrocity a throne for chaos. Every scream in the dark of space echoed twice. Once in reality, once in the warp. And so the Mechanicus and Immaterium became chained forever, twin realms strangling each other in the dark. The universe did not begin perfect and fall into ruin. It began as a war, a violent collision of order and madness, and all of creation is the shrapnel. There was never a golden path, never salvation, never hope without cost. In the end, chaos was not born from the universe. Chaos is what the universe always was.